Hey everyone, and welcome to Travel Through Stories. My name is Sean, and today I want to talk about Fowzia Karimi's book, Above Us, the Milky Way, an Illuminated Alphabet. This was published by Vellum last year in 2020. Fowzia Karimi is an Afghan-American author and illustrator who was born in Kabul, and this is her first book. I was drawn to this book for three primary reasons. One, this book is just physically beautiful. Vellum, as usual, did a really good job with their book, and Karimi obviously did an immaculate job, as it's full of illustrations and photographs, all of which she either took or drew, or painted, I guess. The second reason is, obviously, Afghanistan has been in the news quite a bit recently, and I'm ashamed to admit that I haven't read nearly enough literature about Afghanistan, or literature by Afghans. And then the third reason, this book's structure as an illuminated alphabet really pulled me in, both on its own merit and as a medievalist who loves medieval manuscripts. I find that a lot of modern novels don't fully embrace the idea of the book as object, the physical book, right? The physical book, not just the words inside, as art. I like the way books look, as you can probably tell from behind me. I have a lot of them. And I think that approaching books more holistically as a whole physical work of art, rather than just a sort of container for art, is really cool, and it's something that I really appreciate. And Karimi is very clearly influenced by medieval illuminated manuscripts, Western and Eastern. And some of the paintings that she does in here are, I think, probably directly based on what you might find in a medieval manuscript. So what is this book? Above Us, the Milky Way is a semi-autobiographical book about a family, 5 daughters, a mother, and a father, and their emigration from Afghanistan to America, the United States, shortly after the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in 1979. It's a book that tries to balance these various worlds, the before times in Afghanistan, before the invasion, living after the invasion in Afghanistan during this war, and then this new life in this new land once they were able to finally get out. And as I noted, this book is semi-autobiographical. Fowzia Karimi's family emigrated to the US, to California, in the early 80s. So this book is really about trying to reconcile these opposing identities, this fracture. But it isn't just an immigration narrative that tries to reconcile these two identities, right? Afghan and American. It also tries to understand how to fix the fractures within each of these identities. That is, the land from which they emigrated no longer exists. The war has made it unrecognizable. So part of their identity that the characters attribute to Afghanistan is stressed, because what is Afghanistan in the 1980s? It's certainly very different than Afghanistan in the 1970s. And so this book is structured as an illuminated alphabet. Each chapter takes as its jumping off point a letter, which are always paired with either a picture or a watercolor painting, and is often associated with a word or two that thematically link the entire chapter. B, for instance, is for before. And in this chapter, we get a lot of information on life in Afghanistan before the war broke out. B isn't just for before, though. It's also for beginning and blood. And so each chapter has a strong thematic link that weaves throughout the chapter, though they aren't always perfectly linked, or at least not at first glance. See, what this book does so well is move between these narratives about this family who were victims of this war and emigrated to the United States, and these deeply philosophical explorations of big ideas like memory and war and the meaning of life, right? The ultimate question. And each chapter is polyphonic, as each chapter is filled with vignettes of varying lengths on varying topics. But the effect that it has is this dreamlike wander through the history of this family. She writes in the preface, "The stories in this book are not autobiographical in the true sense. They relate my history as well as ice coating a telephone line might relate the conversations that have passed through that line. The stories here are memories condensed, not whole or linear, but distilled over the many years of my nostalgic life. And as water crystallizes around dust, so my stories would be nothing without many grains of untruth embedded within them. In the end, these are works of fancy, born of remembrance. And she goes on to say, if there is a reality to be found here, then it is the truth of the interior, where story is born and brewed. Karimi is really playing with how memory works, how we remember, and importantly, how those memories manifest themselves in our interior, which of course affects our exterior. And all of this seems very messy. The narrator acknowledges on multiple occasions that this book has no single arc, no single narrative movement. She encourages us, the reader, to enter and exit as you like, and notes a couple of times how messy these memories are structurally. The narrator is being humble, though, as the structure of this book is actually really well wrought. And this goes back to structuring this book as an alphabet, or alongside the alphabet. She writes in the first chapter, A. A is for all, for a story in its entirety, for how it begins, for how into it chaos or pain or desire enters, for what ensues within it, for where it takes us, for how all falls into place at its conclusion, and for the state in which it afterward leaves us. I too am a reader, and I understand the need to consume all. I have this appetite. Moreover, I respect the boundaries set up by the two covers. And yet here, in this book, there are no more than lids, no more than two soft curtains opening on a scene. Yes, I too crave the arc, but you will not find one here. The only way forward is through the alphabet. And so there's so much going on just in these opening pages, right? Everything from the metaphor of the arc of the narrative, which mirrors the arc of the airplane, which takes them from Afghanistan to America, all of which start with the letter A, of course. But it is the alphabet that creates order out of the chaos of these memories. It's the alphabet that provides structure and tames these memories. And what called the alphabet forth, gave it rise? What basic need gave the letters form, their spoken form, their line-drawn form? Were their shapes not embedded into the fabric of the planet from the beginning days? Were the letters not forged alongside the mountains and the valleys, by the winds and the tides? Did the same elements that animated the cell and the synapse not also give breath to the letters? Do you not see the S curled up in the shadow of the rock, the V as it flies through the air? And this is obviously a recurring metaphor throughout this book because, well, the book is set up like an alphabet. And it's a book written in the English language, only using those 26 letters over and over again, just in different orders. That is, the alphabet creates a structure for this book, but it also creates the chaos of this book. Both order and chaos are expressed through the alphabet. Language doesn't exist outside the alphabet. Well, some sort of language exists outside the alphabet, which is, of course, where all the paintings and pictures come in, and they carry with them feelings and thoughts that are without the alphabet. But we use language to try to order the chaos of our memories, but they often remain chaotic. At another point, the narrator tells us, "What I tell you is not the story of my childhood as it occurred neatly, chronologically, but of my childhood as I experienced it internally. It is in the silence and dark of the interior that story is able to ferment, to burn off excesses, to distill down to its essence. In the great internal sea, where story seethes and rise in perfect darkness, new tales are born, unknown to the one dreaming them, until they are ready to be drawn up, as if from a well. That is in fact how this book was written, its tales pulled up by rope and pulley, bucket after bucket, over the many days and recent years of my life." And so the reader has to do a lot of work here, which is a good thing. I like when authors don't just give us the answers and don't just kind of moralize at us. So while this book is ordered by the alphabet, it remains kaleidoscopic. And Karimi plays with this idea of the kaleidoscope a lot, tempting us or asking us to try to figure out the puzzle, or if not figure out the puzzle, at least witness the puzzle. Kaleidoscope. And this book is one. See the little movable pieces? Watch the bright colors arrange and rearrange to tell ever new, ever different tales. Did I not say that you can enter, turn, and return as you like? Keys. Are letters not keys? See them. arrange and rearrange, lock and unlock, turn and click. This book is kaleidoscopic because it moves between memories like a dream, and it's really about all of these memories. But often the more traumatic memories, the ones about the war, infiltrate and rise up and take over the more peaceful and happier memories. There's a moment early on in the chapter B, which is all about the before time, when the narrator is describing life in Afghanistan before the war, and everything is idyllic and everything just sounds beautiful and lovely. But then it gets interrupted. And then there was war. In an instant, much happened, and suddenly. And war on entering obliterated everything and all. War on entering the peaceful scene turned it upside down and inside out. It shattered, severed, distorted, erased, violated, obliterated life, great and small, harmony, great and small, feeling, great and small, wonder, great and small. What was a flower to war? A child to war? A culture, a melody, a river, a picnic, a ritual, a statue, a farmer, a fairy tale, a people, a memory, a taxi driver, to war. So the buildings and farmlands and mountain passes were bombed. So the people were disappeared, raped, tortured, dismembered, swallowed whole. So the children's sense became keener, the adult minds numbed, their skin crawled. So the horror straddled and settled over the land. In the beginning, there was war. Before the war, there was family. There was life. Simple. See how little patience I have for the orderly telling of things? So not only does war interrupt the narrator's life, it interrupts her ordering of her memories, because so few of her memories aren't tainted by war. Even words begin to take on new meanings as the narrator is unable to get back the untarnished memories of her childhood. Before the war, blood meant family. After the war, blood meant death. It's the same word, but it's forever changed. Memories stay with us, whether we want them to or not. They haunt us. There's a brilliant section in this book that ruminates on things like ghosts and how memories haunt us. And she talks about how all of these dead bodies from the war haunt the sisters. And the sisters kind of go along collecting the dead. And one sister begins thinking about this process. Why was I preserved while others were felled like the fields of corn on our uncle's farm in late autumn? But who then lives and who is dead if the ghosts that haunt this world reside within us who walk the earth and breathe its air? Did I strike a bargain with the dead? If so, when? Why? And what for? How will I fulfill my end? And when I have, will it come as a release or as a death repeated? Will I recognize the sound of my own voice in an empty house once they have departed? And another sister continues on thinking in a different way about these memories. And she writes, or she thinks about, from the beginning, did I not collect the dead as one collects seeds that have fallen to the earth? And later, did I not swallow them and give them a place to root and sprout within me, into my own flesh? And further, did I not irrigate the fields in which they grew with my own blood? And so this really brings in the idea that the real narrator of this book are the dead, not the living. Because, well, if the dead are the only things that the living can really think about, then is there a difference between them? It's the memory of the dead, it's the memory of them that haunts these pages. Above Us, the Milky Way, as the name suggests, not only delves deeply into this family history and personal memories and personal trauma, but it wonderfully expands outward to touch on the, well, universal, touch on the universe itself. It moves beyond the human in a mythic way. There's this recurring image of the stars looking down on us as we look up at them. And in fact, the family in this book is described multiple times throughout this book as like a solar system. It talks about how the family moved through space from country to country, city to city, and house to house, a sovereign and self-sufficient body, a renegade solar system that refused or was forced by circumstance to reject the design, laws, and limits of the universe that was its stage. And it goes on to explain that at the center of this roaming solar system was Mother, like a star whose destiny of bone, voice, and will were enough to propel the family on its irregular and unruly course through spaces dark and spaces twinkling, through regions vast and regions close. About her, Father and the girls, like 6 celestial bodies, were held in orbit by the star's attraction, by Mother's immense gravitational pull, because each had different requirements for length of day and diversity of seasons, because some seemed more time or space alone than others. Each body practiced her or his own spin and tilt, and chose elliptical orbits of varying lengths. But none could deny the warmth of that always regular revolution around Mother, their central fire. The small system, unconscious of its course, was well aware of its size in the ever-burgeoning universe. And this is just a beautiful image of the self-sufficient family moving across the world as the world flies around the sun while our solar system moves through the entire universe. Like the family in this book, our solar system is also in a state of immigration in a way. And so this very human idea of stargazing, right? It's something that humans have been doing for literally tens of thousands of years, if not longer. It's the common human experience, or at least until light pollution has begun marring this experience, a couple centuries ago. But this experience of looking up at the stars is something that binds all humans, really. Unless you're physically unable to see, almost every human being has gazed at the moon and at the stars and thought about how small and insignificant they are. And Karimi uses this image over and over again to show this reciprocal relationship. We watch the stars, but the stars also watch us. And what have they not been witness to? The sun, the stars, the moon, the planets, pinned to our firmament like many captive eyes, blinking and unblinking. And then just a few pages further, the sun does not blink, nor ever avert its gaze. It looks on while the earth giddily spins and totters on its axis. This idea of witness is super important in this book. Not only do we witness the universe, but it witnesses us. And of course, Karimi is using all of this to develop a sort of two-way mirror between the book and the reader. We witness this book, and the book witnesses us. We read it, and it reads us, like the best books do. This book, like the stars, is at times a mirror into which we gaze, and we see the human. There's just so much to love about this book. I have so many passages tagged and so many notes written down. There are just so many different ideas and themes that Karimi is interested in, and she so effectively, artfully weaves them all together throughout this entire book. So I tried to give a sense of the scope and the beauty of this book in this review, but I think any attempt at doing this is going to necessarily fall short because, well, it's not the book. What this book does so well, though, is to move between voices, between tones, and between memories. At times it reads like a dream or a fairy tale or a myth, and at other times it drags you into the brutal reality of the hellhole of war and makes you witness it. And at other times it reads like the best kind of meditative philosophy, mixing folklore and philology. But it never feels fragmented. All of these ideas, all of these memories, all of these thoughts are bound together and ordered by the book, by the alphabet. Above Us, the Milky Way was such a surprising book. I picked it up without knowing really anything about either it or its author, Fowzia Karimi, but I came away just absolutely loving it. I just cannot wait to read whatever Karimi does next. So let me know if you've read Above Us, the Milky Way. I'd be interested to hear because I haven't seen too many people talking about it, at least here on YouTube, which I think is quite a shame. So let me know what you think. And for now, thanks for watching.